pacifist, where Mennonites are, and they have no trouble defending their territory and also no trouble taking oaths of allegiance to a country or a state or whatever. So it's a well-defended area as well. Okay, I guess you could say. So we have some pretty interesting stuff going on there. But Germans and Scots-Irish are pretty much the main immigrant groups coming into the middle colonies. So just to kind of show you, this is from the mid-1700s, a typical German hymnal. It kind of tells you that church and religion was very close in the minds of Pennsylvanians and New Jerseyans. Is that even a word? I guess you could say. It works, yes. But hymnals, books of common prayer, religion brought people together. Now, how are the middle colonies distinctive? Let's talk a little bit about Pennsylvania. Again, the best poor white man's country. As I've kind of said before, there are plenty of opportunities for people to come to the United States and make themselves from nothing. That's the big attraction of Pennsylvania with New Jersey. Tremendous. Like, again, there's so much land. You can take a fraction of what it would cost you in Europe to buy it here, create a new life for yourself, reinvent yourself in the new world. People did. That's why they came. They were excited to come. This is kind of interesting. In Pennsylvania, too, there were some slaves. 7% of the population were slaves. But I do want you to know this. Slavery was not an economic necessity in the middle colonies because they had so much labor to begin with. People didn't need slaves. In fact, Pennsylvania is one of the first states, along with Massachusetts, to abolish slavery before the 1800s. Every state, I gotta let you know this, every state actually had some kind of law in which slavery was allowed. It's just that the northern colonies decided they didn't need slavery, so they got rid of it. But the southern colonies were the ones that kept slavery on the books. And in a little while, we'll take a look at slavery up close. There was a ton of land. William Penn was very, very anxious to sell to anybody who wanted to buy, including Indians. They embraced Native Americans in a way that other colonies didn't. And they really tried to include them in the deals that were being made, to include them in the, not in the government necessarily, but to create good relations between the colonies and Native Americans. So again, a diverse area, very tolerant area. In terms of economics too, the middle colonies, one of the reasons that it was distinctive is because it was the breadbasket. Most of the wheat was the primary crop that came out of Pennsylvania. And that wheat basically fueled Pennsylvania, fueled the economic growth of that area. And as a result, the standard of living was unbelievably, it was higher than any of the colonies because of just that one crop, okay? And that's how crops can influence things, right? Remember in the southern colonies how once they figured out that tobacco could be farmed, that's when things turned around for Virginia. They figured out that wheat can be grown very quickly and even taken from Europe and used. That contributed to just tremendous economic growth. Unbelievable economic growth. As an example, as we saw a few weeks ago, As an example of just this prosperity, the primate city of, and this is the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia became the biggest city in the New World, really. Besides the city of London, it became a city where that was a sort of like, to use John Winthrop's word, the city upon the hill, a place where people could come and feel like a part of this new world, and that's what this all was all about. So Philadelphia. And that's another thing too that's starting to happen as well. And the next couple of slides kind of talk about urban population growth and the growth of cities. Now, have any of you guys ever been to the East Coast before? Where have you been?
South Carolina.
South Carolina? Yeah?
New York.
New York, okay. Yeah.
South Carolina, New York, Jersey, Florida, Charleston, Virginia, up and down.
That would be fun. Sounds like a place to go with my kid.
Family.
But
New York, New Jersey.
New York, New Jersey. For anybody that's ever visited the East Coast, it's certainly unlike California, right? I mean, California is very spread out, very diverse, of course. But you go to places like New York and Boston, and it's packed with everything. It's stuffy, lots of people, population density is unbelievably. It's like, but what's starting to happen in the 1700s is we start to have urban growth. This is kind of hard to see. Let me actually see if I can get the lights a little bit. Now, Boston, this is just a picture. Oh, that works, right? No, that's too much. Let's just do this one. These are some of the first maps of Philadelphia and Boston. Philadelphia is on the left, Boston's on the right. These cities started to grow and they started to take on a life of its own. Now, Boston is a place that, frankly, as more people started to move to these cities, they started to grow in strange ways. Like in Fresno and Clovis, pretty much we have a grid pattern, right? North and south, east and west, every major street is a half mile apart, you know what I mean? It's like pretty clearly marked, and that's how it's done. Ain't that way on the East Coast. When you drive around in Boston, which I had the opportunity to do on my honeymoon, it's the most scariest experience of my life. OMG. It was insane. Because streets meander around, you think you're going, there's nothing straight. That's the way these cities grow. They didn't necessarily sprawl out like we know it here in California. So when these people were coming into the cities grew in strange patterns. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Montana, and I've lived in Alaska and Wyoming.
Yes.
And when I moved here, it was the first time I've ever seen streets that were like straight. There's nothing really that like you find on the same.
Isn't it cool?
It was so weird. It was hard for me to learn that I was on the same street that I was on 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had this experience in Boston. We were trying to catch the plane, which is out of Logan Airport. And I swear, I don't know how we got to the airport. I didn't know. Well, this is before the days of cell phones and GPS and stuff. Like we didn't. This is 2002, like 13 years ago, right? Yeah. My anniversary's coming up. I better remember that. But 13 years ago, we're driving down the old streets of Boston. I swear I must have got hit like almost 5 times. It was the scariest times in my entire existence. And we just got there. That would have been
One thing with the East Coast, if you go, you go. You don't think about it, like you don't pause. You see that you go. And one thing about walking across the street, you dart. You don't look left, you run. Because you'll get ran over. Like
get your
if
tail
you're
out
in New
there.
York, you see that crowd walking, you walk, or they will stampede you, and they'll leave you.
I feel that. That's so true. You gotta watch out, man. It ain't like out here. Everybody's on edge. It's the East Coast. East Coast mentality. But people are moving to the city. If you look at this graph, this is big. And I'm only showing you this because to illustrate that point. Cities are growing. The three biggest ones are Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. And you can see the exponential growth in the 1700s. Especially, I mean, look at Philadelphia. I mean, geez, 75 years up to the time of the American Revolution, you've got, oh my God, you know, you go from like maybe 2,000 or 20,000 people right here, all the way up to, well, I'm not good at math, but you can see, it's a lot. And so, cities are growing, and that's another thing that's changing in the northern and middle colonies. Let's hit the southern colonies a little bit. And we've got basically Virginia, which is already established as a royal colony. And look at, we've had some growth in the 1600s. We have another royal colony, South Carolina, which is granted from the king, 1670. 1712, we got North Carolina. In 1733, we got Georgia. All right. Notice that Georgia doubled its size in a little while. But interestingly enough, about all of this is we have Spanish Florida down here, which basically means that that's why you can't expand down there. But we have a little bit more land and a little bit more things happening here. So what's happening in the southern colonies? We're going to talk a little, basically for the next hour or so, we're just going to really hit slavery. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that, okay? In fact, we're going to watch this thing called The Middle Passage, which is an amazing documentary of stuff that you never knew about slavery and how slavery happened and started. I think it's very worthwhile to understand. So in terms of population, the population increases 9 times between 1700 and 1770. Basically, because of two reasons in the southern colonies. One is immigration. And again, we have Scotch, Irish, and Germans. Now, you're probably wondering, why do southern people talk like that? Why do they talk in such funny ways? What's up with that? It has to do with the Scotch-Irish accent, and over time it melding with other accents. And it's like, okay, Mr. Berg, that makes no sense. Well, over time it does. And that's why they talk so funny. To us, maybe, I don't know. To me, it's not that unusual. I think it's kind of cool. I wish I could talk like that. That's more of a Texas drawl, actually.
Yeah.
But, back in Georgia, you have more of a, in Georgia, you know, kind of a sniffy kind of Georgia. South Carolina, North Carolina.
When you hear the backwoods, like I've been in the swamps type
Yeah.
accents, you'd be like, please stop talking.
Like that family on TLC or whatever,
Huh.
the Fabulous Whites of West Virginia or whatever it is. Good stuff.
Wrap around and give me that soda.
You admit to watching that?
I did watch that documentary, and probably the worst was the girl getting tattooed on her arm with some misspelled word, some toothless guy.
Good times. Scary stuff in that. I know, right? You know, you make fun of the accents, but they all come from somewhere.
All of them sound like they sound like they're taxi monkeys, you know.
Oh, absolutely. But the way that, it over time, that's how the accents happen. Now, and it's a mix of Scotch, Irish, Germanic. A linguist would be able to tell you more about that. Me, I'm a mere historian. Slavery is something that is a defining characteristic. Notice the numbers, and it's very significant. You have 20,000 slaves approximately. Now, we don't know exactly. Okay, let's just be honest. I'm just giving you a round number just to make it easier on you. But, I mean, seriously, it could be more than that. It could be less than that. We just go by the historical record. But 20,000 to nearly a Fresno by 1770. Okay, it's